Why are Americans so stupid? I realize that that's going to offend someone out there, but it shouldn't. Because if you're not a stupid person, then you understand where I'm coming from. And of course, this doesn't mean that every other nation is highly intelligent. It means people in general are idiots. However, I would expect a little bit more out of the American education system or the American economy because of, let's just say, theoretically, that's what we stand for, is bettering ourselves, bettering our nation, bettering our people. And yet we continue to fall and fall and fall in the ratings of the world as far as education, as far as healthcare. We have a higher infant mortality rate than a lot of other nations that are just as wealthy or less wealthy than us. We are 38th out of 71 countries in mathematics. 38th. We're not even in the top 10, not even in the top 20. And we're 24th in science out of the top 20, 71 countries. Now, obviously, these are statistics that are meaningless because usually when people talk about numbers and throw facts and figures out, it means nothing unless you understand the context. So we can't really look at the big picture of where America is going, the United States of America anyway, and say, well, this is good or this is bad. There are so many different aspects that we have to consider. But we do have a lot of reasons to believe that the system is in complete favor of the corporations. We've talked about it many times before, so we don't need to go into that. But my question here for this video is really, how much willful ignorance do we have to have as American citizens? You know, I watched some interviews earlier with Americans, and it was just a random video talking about, how people don't even understand the basics about this country. And so many people were asked, how many stars are on the flag? And I was, of course, these are cut videos. Most of the people who know aren't included in the video. It's, in other words, videos are designed to go, oh my God, yeah, I understand that. But the fact that so many American adults don't know how many stars are on the flag, how many states are in their own country, and these are people who are out in the streets complaining about this or that, or, transgender rats, and, oh, gays shouldn't be able to marry, and, many of these people are very uneducated, and I'm not trying to throw in the accent there to say all Southerners are ignorant by any means. It's just that there is a lot of ignorance in the South. And I would say there's an equal amount of ignorance in the city about other issues. In other words, what's important to the people who live in the country, or the people who don't. I don't know. I can't. It's hard to even talk about that without getting into some offensive realm. But, tough shit. It is what it is. The reason I'm making this video is because yesterday was my anniversary, actually, and we happened to get married on Mayday. And I was, Mayday, okay, there were some Mayday protests in France. Now, for all of those who aren't aware of the Yellow Vest protests in France, the workers are trying to get fair wages and workers' rights. And in many countries, when workers are treated, if they feel like they're being slighted, then they stand up and they protest. They stand up and they march for what they believe in. In 1886, in the United States of America, there was an event, an incident, and May 1st was the day when many, hundreds if not thousands of workers marched out in Boston and demanded fair wages and fair hours. At that time, they were just working for a simple 8-hour workday. They were fighting for the 8-hour workday. Some people weren't getting their full 8 hours, other people were being overworked and forced to work longer, and people just wanted consistency. During that incident, there was a bomb that detonated in the streets. I believe 8 people or more were killed, a lot of people injured. It was kind of a nightmare. This was a day that set Mayday in motion. And what a lot of people believed is that other countries would try to quash it and shut down May 1st because they didn't want their workers having the same type of revolution as in America. Well, that idea backfired. And in the long run, all these other countries started using May Day for their protests. So May Day was a workers' rights day that began in America, and that now Americans think it's just a beautiful day to go out and pick flowers. How many people out there who are watching this right now are aware that Mayday is really about workers' rights. Well, it's not your fault if you're not. It's been definitely set up that way. I believe it was Chicago. If I said Boston, I think it was actually Chicago, not Boston, where these protests took place. So, this was in 1886. And afterwards, they created, the president at the time created Law Day. What he considered, he changed May Day to Law Day to kind of go directly and throw it in the face of the workers. Well, no, this is a day about laws. And around the same time, we created Labor Day. And Labor Day was always considered to be kind of a workers' day. But what does the average American think of Labor Day? When you think, oh, it's Labor Day coming. Oh, it's a day off from work. It's a day where we don't have to work. It had nothing to do with not working. It had the direct opposite. The meaning was that we were supposed to be able to stand up for our rights of the working class and those around us to demand equality and fairness. And since the 1% and the profit margins of the companies and the division, the wage gap has gotten so much larger, as well as the income gap, then it's really hard to say that we're winning as American citizens, that we're actually getting what's coming to us, that we've all worked so hard as a nation, and all that money's just been siphoned off for military and for greed and for, corporate welfare and, to pay Congress to sit on their asses. Well, the thing about history is that Americans may not know their history very well, but it's not knowing history that matters. It's not what president served which term or what date did this happen. It's just about having a general idea of what the big events were, the general ideas when they happened, and what that meant for the American people. And I'm only speaking for America because that's where I live. Every country has their own issues. During the Yellow Vest protests yesterday on May Day, they had the left and right, all the different labor unions. They all marched in the streets together. Were they fighting against each other like we tend to do in America? No. They were all fighting for the same purposes, the same cause. The thing about America, and this is the sad part, I've met a lot of people who could probably name every NFL team, but if it wasn't for knowing the teams, they wouldn't even know the states. The people who can't even show you where a state is on a map. And I'm not saying everybody should be able to draw a perfect map of America, but if you saw how little people really know about the nation they live in, then you can only think, well, if they know that little about their own homeland, and these are people who have voting rights, then how little can they know about the rest of the world too? So when they're screaming from their armchair about some other country being a problem, or this nation, or issues over here, or yeah, just go bomb them, these people just don't even know what they're talking about. They are buying into the propaganda that's been fed to them. So if you know if you know all the NFL teams, but you don't even know your own states, that's just another one of those distractions that we put upon ourselves. I'm definitely not saying that this should be imposed upon those who are the masters, if you will, because we choose this now. In the past, we could be fooled and say, well, we just weren't told any better. Now we have access to information at our fingertips, and we can choose to ignore it or to try to understand it better. We know the lives of musicians. We read books about actors and watch movies, but we don't even know the great teachers. So many people don't even read some of these amazing works of look at the. I could go on, I guess, about the details. I'm not going to list off all these different books, but I'm just as guilty. There's a lot of history I still would like to read, and we're all easily distracted. But what I'm finding is, if I don't understand something and it affects my life, then I try my best to understand it. And often, the thing is, we're hung up on the people. In other words, it comes into this culture of pointing the finger at individuals instead of the whole of what's going on. This is how we get these, people like Trump, who gets all the hate from everyone. Do I like Trump? No. But I'm looking at it neutrally and trying to look at it from the standpoint of, it is what it is. Just because I don't like him doesn't mean he might not get some things done. Do I agree with his policies? No, of course not. But I'm trying to be fair, trying to be balanced, and trying to be open-minded about it. And I'm listening. Okay? I'm listening to the other side. I'm listening to what people have to say. And a lot of it makes sense. But a lot of it is just pure stupidity that is based on facts and figures that make absolutely no sense. So, one thing is that people can't identify stupidity if they're not aware of it. That's the Dunning-Kruger effect. You know, the less you know, the more you think you know. And that's unfortunate, because that means that the people who know the most are often the most tight-lipped and don't want to say anything, because they know that others won't understand it. It's like all the greatest teachers or gurus, you know, the ones that kind of wander off into the woodwork and don't want to bother with trying to teach others because others aren't willing to listen. And also aware enough to know that just because that works for them doesn't mean it will for everyone. I'm not here to say people need to change and be a certain way at all. I'm saying we all need to just educate ourselves as best as we can, so we are armed with proper information when we actually want to have a discussion about something. If a person doesn't want to be educated and they don't want to be aware of history, there's nothing wrong with that. But don't raise your protest signs or start putting your pen down to vote if you don't understand the policies that you're voting for, and that's the problem that we're in. Citizens United is a great example of how bad it really has gotten. You know, if you know about Citizens United, then you're well aware of what I'm talking about. But if not, you should do your homework on that one. It's basically putting a face on corporations as being people. Corporations are able to sue as an individual. They're able to do anything an individual can, including vote, including give contributions, campaign contributions to their favorite politicians. And you know, they keep us distracted with people, not politics. We're worried about this one guy over here or this one guy over here. And powerful people will turn us on one another in order to... the thing is, left and right politics, as we see them on television or in the voting booth or the way that we're shown, they don't generally apply to the average person. In other words, all of the policies that we vote for don't affect the poor as much as they should. Whether you vote left or right doesn't mean that you're going to, you know, it's going to be any better or worse for you, because everything is just in such limbo and chaos. It's almost like you have to reach in and grab what you can while you can. And meanwhile, you're paying a huge percentage of your, you know, not just your taxes out of your wage, but taxes everything you buy, sales tax, gas tax. Where does all this money go? What happens when the government, you know, ends up getting a huge settlement from a company that poisoned a bunch of people? And where does all this money go? Well, it just gets funneled into coffers and private funds and offshore accounts, and trillions of dollars disappear from the economy, like they have with the Pentagon. And all we can do is just left scratching our heads going, well, we better fight our own people. Yeah, we better fight those damn conservatives, or we better fight those damn liberals. And so the reason I'm really even saying this is I'm hoping that at least one extreme liberal who points the finger at all the conservatives, or vice versa, one extreme conservative who says all the liberals are the problem, can realize that really all of us just want to be able to work our jobs. We want to be able to have the ability to move forward in this world without overbearing regulations and the prison system, the military-industrial complex, all of these things. There's a much larger picture going on than basically we're peons, and we know this. In other words, when you say, I'm an American, what does that mean to you? And I'm going to do a separate video about that a little later. But is it the land? Is it the people? And if so, what, do just half the people suck to you? And if so, how can you live in a nation where half the people suck and be proud of it? Pride is reserved for things we do, not things we happen upon or by chance. So anyway, I'll talk about that in a separate one. But when we hear statistics and we don't understand them, then we tend to, well, make a decision based on the best information we have. And we are just humans. We are just humans. We can't expect anybody to be the expert, and we want somebody to be the expert on these things. When we learn more and understand more, and the more confident we get in what we do know, then the more able we are to be willing to change our minds. And there's something to be said about that. It's a very important trait that we all should develop, I think, in my opinion, is the ability to change your mind and look at things differently. And sometimes that means to wake up to the fact that you're being distracted, that we're playing the victim, that we talk about how hard our life is and not realizing that everybody else's life is the same fucking problem. We all have issues. Some people are worse off than others, but we're not going to do anything to change that until we understand the reason why things are the way they are. And until Americans can go out and march in the streets demanding better wages and better appropriations, or whatever it may be, on Mayday rather than going out and picking flowers, then we might get somewhere. But this turned into a 15-minute video just explaining one big long idea that I had about why, something as simple as Mayday being twisted by our, 100 years ago, and being kind of shut down and turned into just some holiday to pick flowers, and people just go along with it. And it's not just Mayday, There are so many travesties, and we're being fucked over in so many ways that we have a couple choices. You can either stand up, fight for your rights and what you think is important, or you can just back away from it all and say screw it. George Carlin took the fuck it approach. He just said, he was the one who always said, how people say, well, you say if you don't vote, you can't complain. And he said he disagrees. If you do vote, you can't complain, because no matter who you vote for, you're going to be fucked. And it's really hard to kind of dispute that mentality, in the sense that, I'll just put it this way. As an American, if you want to be proud of where you live, be proud of your country, then put in some effort to improve it. But if you're not a nationalist, if you just happen to be born into this country in this circumstance, don't feel obligated to go out and become all political. I mean, this system was imposed upon us, okay, as individuals, and we're torn between whether we should try to make a difference or just walk away from it all. And I'll tell you that ambivalence, I don't know. I'm still stuck in the middle there. I go back and forth. And so I guess that's all I got. I could go on, but I don't want to make it too long. I hope you all are doing well, and hopefully Americans will, I don't know, I don't really see a future where we can just improve our education system and everybody will be happy. I think that we've made the choice to be distracted, and it's because we don't have enough pressure upon us. But that pressure's coming. Definitely is. Talk to you soon. Be well.